The afternoon sun over the Hamptons was blinding, reflecting off the polished silver and crystal of the Bradford wedding reception like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Victoria Bradford stood at the center of the lawn, her silk gown rustling as she pointed a manicured finger at the woman standing near the reflecting pool. "Security. Remove this woman immediately." Victoria's voice didn't just carry, it sliced. Her Cartier watch glinted as she waved dismissively at the figure in the simple navy dress. "I will not have our family's reputation destroyed by some crasher looking for handouts. This is a private celebration for the elite, not a soup kitchen." Angela Washington didn't flinch. She stood with a stillness that was almost unnatural amidst the flurry of panicked servers and whispering guests. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Angela said, her voice steady and low. "Misunderstanding?" Victoria stepped closer, her perfume cloying and heavy. She lowered her voice to a vicious whisper. "Listen carefully. This estate is worth $30 million. These guests represent the oldest American families in the country. You do not belong here. You don't even belong on the sidewalk outside these gates." "I apologize for any inconvenience," Angela replied, her eyes tracking something behind Victoria, the way the sun hit the stone of the main house. "The audacity," Victoria hissed. "Walking onto private property like you own the place. You probably crawled over the back fence." She snapped her fingers at two approaching security guards. "Escort her out now before she tries to steal something or embarrass herself further. Check her pockets." Angela's hands remained steady at her sides. "As you wish." Victoria watched with a smug grin as Angela turned to leave. But Angela didn't head for the front gates. Instead, she began to walk toward the garden path with an unsettling familiarity. She didn't look down at the ground, yet her steps followed the exact route to avoid the loose flagstones that usually tripped up guests in high heels. As Angela passed the catering station, the manager froze mid-conversation. His face went pale, the bottle of vintage champagne in his hand trembling. "Mrs. Bradford, that's a nuisance being removed," Victoria snapped, whirling around. "Get back to work." The manager didn't move. He watched Angela with wide eyes, whispering something to the head server. Suddenly, the atmosphere among the staff shifted. The head groundskeeper, a man who had worked for the Bradfords for 2 decades, slowly removed his cap as Angela passed him. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of profound respect he had never once shown Victoria. "Why is everyone acting so weird?" Victoria muttered, her irritation growing. She followed Angela at a distance, watching as the intruder moved through the estate like a ghost returning to its haunt. Angela avoided the irrigation sprinklers without looking, took a shortcut past the old carriage house that wasn't on any guest map, and paused by an ancient oak tree. Her fingers brushed the bark where a set of initials, JW, were carved deep into the wood, decades old and weathered. The wedding planner approached Victoria, wringing her hands. "Mrs. Bradford, perhaps we should stop this?" "Stop what?" "Protecting my home." Victoria's voice rose, drawing the attention of the surrounding socialites. "I won't let some random woman sue our estate because she wandered in here uninvited." Angela paused at the reflecting pool, staring at the fountain. The brass nameplate that once read Washington Estate had been removed 20 years ago, replaced by a Bradford crest, but the mounting holes were still visible under the moss. An elderly valet, Thomas, approached Angela hesitantly. "Miss Angela? Is that really you?" Victoria stormed over. "Do you know this person, Thomas? Explain yourself." Thomas looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him. Well, she used to visit here. A long time ago." "Hello, Thomas," Angela said with a gentle smile. "The gardens look beautiful. You've kept the hydrangeas just the way my father liked them." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "Miss, your father would be so proud. You look just like him." "Enough." Victoria stepped between them, grabbing Thomas's arm. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but this conversation is over. Get back to the valet station before I fire you on the spot." As Victoria treated the elderly man like property, the rest of the staff began to react. Hushed conversations spread through the service areas. The head butler looked ready to faint, and two housekeepers clutched each other's arms, whispering prayers. "What is wrong with everyone today?" Victoria demanded, her face flushing red. She pointed an accusatory finger at Angela, who had now sat down at an empty garden bench. "She's making our entire staff nervous. She's a toxin in this environment." "Guards. I told you to remove her." The guards approached Angela again, but they seemed reluctant now, their movement slow. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one whispered, almost apologetically. "Of course," Angela said, rising gracefully. Victoria watched her go, turning to her friend Constance Whitmore. "The absolute nerve of some people. Claim she belongs here. As if we would ever associate with her type." "The entitlement is astounding," Constance agreed, adjusting her emerald necklace. "Probably looking for a handout." "You should have called the police immediately, Victoria." Angela paused at the iron gates. She ran her hand over the scrollwork her great-grandfather had commissioned in 1924. The security guard noticed the gesture, and his face went white. "In a moment," Angela told him. She studied the brass nameplate welded over the original family name. It was a sloppy job, done in haste, 20 years ago. Behind her, the guests continued their satisfied chatter, congratulating Victoria on protecting their social circle. Victoria addressed the crowd like a victorious general. "Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive the disruption. Some people simply don't understand their place in society." Angela finally stepped through the gates, but she didn't walk to the bus stop or hail a cab. She moved to a black sedan parked across the street. She opened the trunk and retrieved a heavy leather briefcase. The security guard watched from the gate, his voice trembling. "Ma'am, what's in the case?" Angela's smile was small and sharp. "Documentation. The real confrontation is about to begin." Part 2. The Verdict and the Mercy. The reception was in full swing when the gates creaked open again. Angela Washington walked back onto the lawn, the leather briefcase gripped firmly in her hand. "What now?" Victoria's voice rose an octave, vibrating with pure fury. "Security. I told you to keep her out. This is harassment." But Angela didn't head for the buffet or the bar. She walked calmly to an empty table at the edge of the terrace and sat down. She opened the briefcase and began reviewing thick stacks of legal documents, ignoring the sea of hostile faces surrounding her. "She's actually trying to crash the reception now," Margaret whispered, horrified. "Should we call the police?" "I'm doing it now," Victoria said, pulling out her phone. "This is a mental health crisis at this point." "Is she reading legal papers?" Harrison Blackwell squinted across the lawn. Victoria's blood chilled for a split second, but she pushed the feeling down. "It's a prop. She's trying to intimidate us with fake papers she printed at a library." Victoria marched over to Angela's table. "Absolutely not. Nobody serves this woman. Nobody speaks to her. You are a trespasser, and the police are on their way." "I'm simply documenting my observations," Angela said, making a note on a legal pad. "Observations of what?" Victoria shrieked. "Behavior patterns," Angela replied. "Social dynamics. Power structures. It's fascinating how quickly people turn to cruelty when they think someone is beneath them." "You're trying to intimidate my guests with your amateur psychology," Victoria yelled. "You have no idea what real power looks like." "Don't I?" Angela asked. The tension was broken by a new arrival. Detective Ray Coleman, a local legend and a guest at the wedding, approached from the parking area. He was 6 feet of solid muscle, usually the most confident man in any room. But when his eyes locked on Angela, his face went completely white. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "Angela, what are you doing here?" Victoria spun around, triumphant. "Ray, thank God. You know this woman? Arrest her. She's been harassing us all day." Ray looked at the hostile crowd, then at the briefcase, then back at Angela. "I know her," he said slowly. "And, Victoria, you need to stop talking. Right now."
"What?"
"Why?" "Mrs. Bradford," Ray said, his voice dropping an octave. "Do you know who actually holds the deed to this estate?" "We do." The Bradfords have lived here for 20 years. Ray pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Nassau County property records are public, Victoria. Let's see. 47, Meadowbrook Lane. Purchased in 1924 by James Washington. Passed to Robert Washington in 1952. And in 2003. He paused, looking at his screen in disbelief. Transferred via inheritance to Angela Washington. No sale recorded. None. The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible, Harrison sputtered. We bought this legally. Actually, Angela said, standing up and spreading 3 documents on the table. 20 years ago, my father received a fraudulent letter claiming the property had been sold to cover debts. The letter was signed by Bradford Estate Management. It was a fake. No debts existed. You've been living on my property without permission, without a lease, and without paying a dime of rent for 2 decades. We've been maintaining it, Victoria screamed. With my money, Angela countered. Thomas, the groundskeeper? I've been paying his salary through the Washington Trust for 20 years. The property taxes? Paid by my trust. You've been parasites in a house that was never yours. Victoria lunged for the papers, but Ray stepped in the way. Victoria, don't. I just got a text from the station. The Angela Washington Trust has been the sole taxpayer on this land since the early 2000s. Victoria's world was crumbling. She looked at her guests, seeking support, but they were already backing away, whispering about fraud and scandal. I'm calling my lawyer, Victoria gasped. Richard Petton. He'll fix this. Richard Petton arrived 10 minutes later, breathless. But when he saw Angela, he didn't even open his briefcase. He stopped dead, his face ashen. Judge Washington, he whispered. Judge. Victoria's voice cracked. Judge Angela Washington, Ray Coleman corrected, removing his hat. United States District Court. She handles federal fraud, public corruption, and organized crime. She's appointed by the president, Victoria. She's essentially untouchable. The wedding guests began to flee. The elite didn't want to be anywhere near a federal investigation. It gets worse, Victoria, Petton whispered, pulling her aside. I just checked her record. She's the judge who presided over your son's case 3 years ago. Victoria's knees finally gave out. She collapsed into a garden chair. Her son, Michael, the groom, approached the group. He was dressed in his tuxedo, looking at Angela with tears in his eyes. Judge Washington, Michael said, his voice trembling. I had no idea you were the one who owned this place. He turned to his mother. Mom, this is the woman who showed me mercy. When I was facing 25 years for that money laundering mess, she saw something in me. She gave me community service instead of a cell. She saved my life. The irony was a physical weight in the air. Victoria had spent the afternoon spit-shining her reputation by stepping on the neck of the woman who had kept her son out of a federal prison. Angela picked up her briefcase. I came here today to see if the people living in my father's house were worthy of the mercy I showed their son, she said, her voice echoing across the now empty terrace. Your Honor, please, Victoria sobbed. We'll leave. We'll pay everything back. You will, Angela said firmly. But here are my terms. You will publicly apologize to Thomas and every staff member you insulted today. You will establish a scholarship fund in the Washington name that exceeds the 20 years of rent you owe. And you will move out by the end of the month. Angela looked at Michael. Your son has learned accountability. It's time you did the same. As Angela Washington walked toward the iron gates, the staff stood in a line, bowing their heads as she passed. She didn't look back at the mansion. She didn't need to. She finally knew that her father's legacy was clean, and the house was finally, truly home.